Gracias. All right. Everybody good? Perfect. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. My name is Shane Harris, the CEO of S. Harris Communication, public advocate for San Diego, and the spokesperson for the No on A campaign. Let me begin by saying that we stand here outside of the San Diego Superior Courthouse for a reason today. And we have one of the best legal minds in our city that is going to speak to why this measure puts the city at legal liability at stake. Measure A is not just another ballot measure. It is legally questionable, financially risky, an invasion of privacy, deeply invasive, that San Diegans deserve to fully understand the full scope before they vote. For months, voters have been told this is about empty homes. It's about housing. But that's not the full story. The measure reaches far beyond vacant properties and creates a brand new bureaucracy system that gives government greater authority over how people use their homes, how they document their residency, and how they prove their compliance to the city. That should concern every homeowner, and might I add, every aspiring homeowner. That's why as a renter, I am clear. The legal concerns here are real. Members of the San Diego City Council, or specifically one member, Raul Campillo, has voiced the concerns regarding not having sufficient legal assurance that the city will not be at stake if this measure becomes law. We have already seen a judge force changes to ballot language in different cities that are related to this kind of measure after determining that portions of it, even earlier this year, we took the city to court and won when a judge ruled that portions of this were misleading to voters in the context of the ballot language. That alone should give the public a pause. At a time when our city is already facing serious financial challenges and a growing budget deficit, the last thing taxpayers, you, need is another legally questionable measure that could drag the city into costly litigation and create even more bureaucracy. And despite what some supporters claim, this measure does not guarantee that a single dollar will go toward housing. That's the most despicable portion of this. The revenue flows directly into the general fund, meaning that City Hall can spend it however it chooses. San Diegans want real housing solutions. We want affordability. We want more opportunity. But this measure does not build housing. Let us be clear. It does not lower cost. Let us be clear. Instead, and it does not address the root causes of the housing crisis in our city. Instead, it creates more government oversight, more uncertainty, and more division. Today, you will hear from homeowners, a city council member, community leaders who believe voters deserve the truth. Transparency, accountability, and honesty before they cast their ballots. Because this election is not just about housing. It's about trust. Thank you. With that being said, I want us to first hear from a homeowner who is affected by this, who owns two homes. One in southeastern San Diego and one in off of Boston Street in District 8. So one in District 4, one in District 8. He is affected by this not just as a second homeowner, but he's affected by this as a homeowner because every homeowner, we believe, if this passes, every homeowner, if you just own one home, will have to fill out exemption paperwork to tell the city that you actually live in the home that you live in and wake up in every day. That is what is most despicable, and that is why this affects every single homeowner, whether you own one home, two homes, a home and a condo. Every homeowner is affected by this measure if it passes. Let us hear from a second homeowner and a homeowner in our city, Abdur Rahim Hamid, who is also president of the National Black Contractors Association.
Thank you, Shane. You know, we live in a city that we are basically moving to overgovern the people, we the people, and the freedom and the right to pursue financial opportunities. My second home is a home that was come from generations to come. And to be faced with a mandate that requires us to report every year and also be penalized or overtaxed is an atrocity. Too many of us are striving to have financial sustainability by building up income properties. So for individual homeowners that have a second home, which is a retirement home property or property that will build retirement income, this policy and this measure will be harmful to us and to our communities. So we're asking you to vote no on A in support of the freedom and democracy of our community and our people that are basically trying to strive for something that is better and economically for their families and their future. I want to thank you, Brother Shane, for all the work that you do. And for those of you who hear me, it is about sustainability for future generations, and we do it through home ownership and acquiring properties, additional homes. Thank you.
It is now my honor to introduce someone who has shown real leadership and courage in raising serious questions at City Hall. The Union Tribune has attributed to him as the most honest person in City Hall. Let us be clear. At a time when many politicians stay silent, Councilmember Raul Campillo has been willing to speak out about the unanswered legal concerns surrounding this measure. He voted against it because the city attorney could not provide him a full legal analysis to assure him that the city would not be at a legal risk if this passed. Representing San Diego's 7th District, Councilmember Campillo has emphasized the importance of transparency, accountability, and making sure voters fully understand what they are being asked to approve. Please join me in welcoming San Diego City Council Member Raul Campillo.
Good morning. Thank you, Shane. Look, it gives me no pleasure to stand in opposition to 8 of my colleagues who I genuinely feel want to solve issues. We got budget issues, we got housing issues, but Measure A is not a solution to any of those issues. As I brought up at the City Council, there is significant legal risk here of putting this before the voters, to have them approve it, only to be mired in litigation, especially when a judge in the San Francisco Superior Court struck down an almost identical measure as unconstitutional and in violation of state law. Now, what does that mean to the taxpayers? They're being asked, vote for this tax and we're going to see more revenue for libraries and parks and housing. And what I'm trying to point out is none of that's ever going to happen. Because when a court strikes it down, we don't collect that revenue that they're expecting. The members of the City Council have said, we're going to spend that to make your lives better. And then on top of that, when the city gets sued for items like this, and we've been sued and lost so many times before on illegal ballot measures, the taxpayers have to pay the litigation fees. Those are the taxpayer dollars I want to see invested in libraries, in parks, in housing that's affordable for San Diegans. Now, the coalition behind me are people that I agree with on many issues, disagree with on some issues, but behind me is the diverse coalition of people who say there are so many problems with this, the voters should simply not take the risk. It's not worth the risk. And I think it's almost certain that it's going to be struck down when a judge in San Francisco says no go on multiple levels. I've been an attorney for 12 years now. It seems pretty straightforward to me what the legal risks are. But what I wanted to bring up so much about this is the result, is reduced trust in city government. Because if and when a judge strikes this down, it's not just the tax dollars that get wasted. It's not just the illusion of a promise of more revenue for city services, which everybody behind me wants us to see more services to residents. It's the lack of trust that you can put into your elected leaders who simply won't tell you the truth, who say, oh, people who own 2 homes should pay more. Well, when a judge takes this up, just like a judge a month ago took up the ballot initiative name in question and said it was misleading, the voters will again have another reason to distrust their elected leaders. That's something you can't put a price on. We need the voters to understand we're looking out for their best interest, telling them the truth, and being fair with what the risks are. And that's the biggest risk here. The voters will see another false promise, another illusion. And as an attorney of 12 years, as someone who read the rule placed right in front of me, I couldn't just go along with the show. It already had 8 votes to pass. We had already heard from many people. We knew there was going to be 5 votes. I wasn't willing to put the city's reputation on the line again in court, simply to lose and pay more taxpayer dollars to lawyers and litigation, wasted time when we should be solving the issues right in front of us. I know Mark Kersey, a former council member, he's worked on issues like this. He's seen issues like this. He's going to tell you, too, just how much this is costing taxpayers to even put it on the ballot in a second. But I want to thank the people behind me who fight for more services, fight for more housing, fight for fairness, fight for a better city government, and don't want to see us waste taxpayer dollars on litigation. I feel so strongly about this that when 8 of my colleagues said, let's just try it out, I said, no, we can't just try things out. We have to vet them fully and deliver for our voters. That's what we should be doing. So, if the voters pass this, the biggest risk, it's just going to cost us more taxpayer dollars when a judge strikes it down. That's not a risk that's worth it. Let's find better ways. Let's find better spending. Let's find better cuts. Let's find different forms of revenue. And let's actually deliver for voters. Thank you.
That guy's sharp. That guy is really sharp. Let us hear from, at this time, we're proud to have the support of the president of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers San Diego chapter. Let me tell you why this is such a big deal. When we first started to oppose this, they said, oh, it's a bunch of rich white homeowners that are angry. It's not true. Not true at all. It's a diverse group of people across the span of this city who represent multiple constituencies who are opposed to this because they know that this is an attack on home ownership. And so we have the largest real estate institution that advocates for realtors now backing, the president of the local chapter now backing this because he even knows this is not about rich white folks, that they've deemed this. Sean Elo Rivera and some of the folks on the city council have deemed this that this is about. This is affecting every homeowner. This is affecting every renter who wants to become a homeowner. This is affecting the entire city in one way or another. So at this time, let us hear from the president of the San Diego chapter of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the biggest organization that advocates for minority and black realtors, now backing this. Greg Hill, the president of NAREB San Diego.
Thank you. As the president of NAREB San Diego, I personally support the no on Measure A. This is a city that needs solutions to housing, not more obstacles. This measure does not show in any way, shape, or form how it's going to help to increase home ownership. It is not developing home ownership. The funds go into the public funds, which means they can spend it any way that they want to. None of this money is earmarked for housing. None of this is earmarked to help people to get into houses. And the main issue right now in San Diego is we don't have enough affordable housing. We need to find ways in order to get people into houses that are not traditionally able to get in there. The National Association of Real Estate Brokers, we advocate for democracy in housing. We need to equal the playing field. And this is a measure that is going to equally affect those that have maybe made the strides to pull themselves up, to get additional homes, to, like my former said, that they inherited a home from their family. Now someone else is living. They're not there the whole time, right? This is going to affect people equally. It doesn't matter what district they're in. But we need more solutions in the city for fair housing and more solutions for housing in general and development and less obstacles to real estate in San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. This is so bad that even the Taxpayers Association has to tell San Diegans that this is a horrible investment. You know, we want to talk about investments. We all believe in investments, but we believe in smart, realistic, logical, and rational investments. This is not one of those. Let us hear from this time from the president and CEO of the San Diego County Taxpayers Association, my good friend Mark Hersey.
Thank you, Shane. Good morning, everybody. This is not a housing measure, and you've heard this. This is a revenue measure. The proponents of this measure could have dedicated the money directly to housing, which is what they did up in San Francisco. Here in San Diego, the proponents of Measure A chose not to do that because that would have required a 2/3 vote, and they knew there was no chance that they were going to actually get that 2/3 vote. And so instead, the money is going directly into the general fund, which currently has a $100 million plus annual structural budget deficit, and this money would be used to help close that deficit. And that is a problem if you believe that this is a housing measure. It is not. It is a tax measure disguised as a housing measure, and that's an issue. If you want to talk about fairness, then I think the question would be, as the proponents do, the question would be, why is it that someone with a, let's say, $500,000 or $600,000 condo in Mission Beach would pay the exact same rate, the exact same flat amount of $8,000 in the first year, rising to $10,000 in the second year, as someone with a $10 million house on La Jolla? There is nothing fair about that, and yet that is exactly how the measure is written. And finally, the issue of the cost to the city. Just to place this ballot measure on the June election is going to cost the city's taxpayers $1.9 million, just to have the election. That is separate and independent from the amount that we would ordinarily be spending on the various city council races that are already happening. So $1.9 million just to have this measure that is, as you've already heard, almost certainly going to be ruled unconstitutional and unenforceable. $1.9 million that could be used for actual housing, by the way, or any number of other things that are being cut right now in the mayor's proposed budget, whether that's library hours, park and rec center hours, comfort station in parks, any of these things that are being cut, that $1.9 million could have been used to pay for. And instead it's going to pay for an election, for a measure that is likely going to fail. Even if it does pass, we'll be tied up in litigation for years and years and years, costing the taxpayers even more money, and it is all a waste of taxpayer dollars. This city has real needs, it has real budgetary challenges, and Measure A is not going to do a single thing to solve either of those. Thank you very much.
Boy, Mark, can you come back to City Hall? I mean, I know you're enjoying retirement, but we need logical, rational minds at City Hall. Look, let me underscore the closing of this, and then I'll take questions. I want to also acknowledge the Pacific Southwest Association of Realtors is here. We want to thank you guys, and the San Diego Association of Realtors, and a number of others. Look, I've heard from multiple people on this issue. I've spoken, you all heard last time we held a news conference at City Hall. You heard from Ellen Shaw, who's a lady who owns a condo in Rancho Bernardo. She comes back and forth from Nevada. She's not there 182 days a year. In some cases, she would be taxed $8,000 and then $10,000 every year after if she can't prove that that's her primary residence. She comes here for medical treatments, bought the condo back in the 90s, and her husband died just 2 years ago. And so she comes back and forth for medical treatments. She's not rich. You heard from Hamid, who is a homeowner in South San Diego, not rich, inherited a legacy property, has both properties and lives in one of them. It's not rich. Look, at the end of the day, the underscored issues with this measure is it's going to affect a lot of people. The city argues, and this past week, one of the council members who backed this measure argued to Axios that military families will be exempted. That's not true. What they don't tell you is that if you're a member of the military, and we're a military city for the longest, if you're a member of the military, you have to file an exemption however long you're on deployment and tell the city that you're on deployment and you don't want to be taxed $8,000 or $10,000. What if you're on deployment and you do that wrong? You're worried about being exempted for something that you should automatically be exempted from. if you're a member of the military. There are so many things that is wrong with this measure that puts legal liability at risk for the city, that puts the money that the little bit of money that would come in from this at risk, because nobody can tell you where that's going to go and how exactly that money is going to be invested into affordable housing, into services. And so at the end of the day, we have to weigh out the liability with the pros and the cons and look at both sides of this measure and really make a decision. If this was about housing, the money would have been invested into housing. But it's clear that this is not about housing. This is about filling the city's budget deficit whole that no taxpayer in the city of San Diego is responsible for making. And so it is my belief, in closing, that voters should reject this measure that is on their ballot right now. They should vote no on A. No on A. No on A. No on A. And they should send City Hall back to the table to figure out how they can deal with the deficit strategically, logically, and rationally without any more piecemeal taxation. Taxpayers of this city are tired of piecemeal taxation strategies. You want to address the deficit? You got to dig down in your pocket like families do every single damn day in this city. They have to go to the table, they have to look at their wallet, and they have to look at what's coming in, and they have to cut spending. The city wants to really get down to the core of the deficit crisis. You ought to do what taxpayers have to do every day. Look at your budget, look at your spending, and see where you need to make cuts. Voters should vote no on A. And now at this time, I'll take questions from the media. Thank you all for being here. Yep.
Explain what the argument was, and you can talk about the San Francisco example of why this would be unconstitutional.
Sure. George? Or Raul? George, you go for it first. Okay. No, I'll give it to Raul. Yeah. I'll give that one to Raul.
What the court in San Francisco said was that there was multiple grounds for striking down their very similar tax to what is titled Measure A. The unconstitutionality grounds were under the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, which essentially says the government cannot deprive you of the use of your property without just compensation. So essentially eminent domain is a concept that you hear a lot. Fundamentally, the court up there agreed with the homeowners that were suing, saying that's the tax deprives them of the use of their property in such a way that the government has to actually compensate them for that use. That's one of the grounds that was up there. The state law called the Ellis Act is a different piece of law that on its face says if you compel a landlord to rent out when they don't want to, or you compel them to rent out when they want to go out of business, that's against state law. What we saw a lot of in the 80s was cities across the state of California forcing landlords to stay in business and make sure that they kept renting units. And the state passed a law that said doing that is illegal. So it'll come down to whether or not a judge agrees that an $8,000 or $10,000 tax is a form of compulsion in violation with the state Ellis Act. The court in San Francisco found that. So I can't tell you exactly what the rate was up in San Francisco, but $8,000 to $10,000 of value on a home could essentially deprive the homeowner of almost all the profit they might make out of whatever type of use they want to use it for. That's a fact-by-fact circumstance. But when it comes to the constitutional issue, it's essentially an eminent domain argument about a taking of the value of that property. It's one of many arguments. It's very legal. I am the only council member that voted against this. It was 8-1 vote. You know, I gave the city attorney's office an opportunity to write and research why they thought this would be a legal tax to impose, and they never got back to me with that. Frankly, as an attorney, I was shocked by that. What I would say is I'm not against or for any idea until I fully research it, and I rely on the city attorney's office to do that type of work, city staff to do that type of work. And when the city attorney's office and staff say we're not giving you any answers, you shouldn't expect your elected leaders to support ideas when the research hasn't been done. The second thing I'd say is it's not hard for me to stand up for voters who are demanding more out of their city government to be transparent and accountable. So if it's not going to be transparent and accountable, I'm going to vote no. So was it hard? Not really.
And I think people should remember that kind of stuff. Any more questions? If there's no more questions, I want to thank you all for attending today's news conference. I think the underscored aspect here is the legal liability, that this puts the taxpayers' money at risk. And everyone should vote no on this measure for a lot of reasons, but the legal liability is a top one. If this is going to put the city at legal risk, which it likely could and will, then it puts our money, taxpayers' money, at more risk in a city that is already in an $121 million budget deficit, in a city that can't tell you how they're going to enforce this, what the strategy would be. Would they create a new department? They're making cuts to employees. Who's going to work the job to investigate if you live in your house or not? And you should vote no on a measure that's going to put every homeowner at risk. No matter whether you have a second home, one home, two homes, three homes, every homeowner at risk, because you'll have to fill out an exemption every year telling the city that you actually live in your house. That, my friends, is an invasion of privacy. We should build smart. We should open more housing, build near transit, density focused. Most of these 5,100 homes are not anywhere near transit. So who's this really benefiting, and what is this really about? Vote no on A. Thank you. That concludes our news conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Of course, yeah, no, it's you got to take some bullets around here. I get it. I just didn't want you to not get any love, man. You know, you get your 2 minutes.